Focus on Headline. All right, let's take a look at what major issues are making the headlines today on Focus on Headline. For this, joining us in the studio, we have our Tuesday reporters joining us. It is Kwon So-an, Choi Ji-hee. Guys, welcome back.
Good to see you.
All right, there you go. We are going to start things off with some news on the South Korea-U.S. relations. Two allies kicking off their crisis management drills on Tuesday in the run-up to the Ulchi Freedom Shield, or the UFS exercise. So, Chi, why don't you start us off with this?
Sure. So the combined forces of South Korea and the United States plan to launch 4-day preliminary drills on Tuesday ahead of their major combined exercise set to begin next week. Now, the South Korea-led crisis management drills would be conducted from Tuesday to Friday, aimed at practicing procedures to respond to possible pre-war crisis scenarios. Now, the preparatory drills would be conducted in the run-up to the Ulchi Freedom Shield exercise, a newly named summertime military exercise between the two allies involving field maneuvers. Now, South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff said in a statement on Tuesday that the UFS exercise, which is defensive in nature as it has been annually staged, would last from August 22nd to September 1st. Now, the drills will also involve assistance from a government response team so that measures that have integrated politics, information, and the economy can be implemented in the event of crises. The Defense Ministry plans to boost the nation's capacity to handle an all-out war situation and apply scenarios in the drills that have taken into consideration international disputes and threats to infrastructure. Now, the JCS noted that the UFS exercise would involve field maneuvers to ensure condition of a stable push for the transition of wartime operational control as well through the assessment of the full operational capability. Meanwhile, North Korea denounced the exercise as a dress rehearsal for a northward invasion.
I mean, that's the statement that always comes from North Korea every time South Korea and the United States hold these military drills, right? I mean, we emphasize the fact that it is defensive in nature. I think a lot of the drills in itself, if you look at how it's done, it looks very defensive in nature. I mean, unless we're talking about like the kill chain military drills, which literally is how to kind of go bum rush into North Korea and destroy all the missiles and the nuclear weapon sites and so forth. That I guess is offensive in nature, but this is certainly defensive in nature. But North Korea is always going to denounce this. Whether or not North Korea is going to respond with another provocation is the big question. But I think due to the weather conditions and some of the economic conditions that North Korea is going through right now, there hasn't been any provocation in some time, which unusual, really enough to say it's unusual for North Korea, especially this year. We've been seeing many provocations from them. Also, the U.S.-backed South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol's aim to engage in dialogue with North Korea following Yoon's remarks during his Liberation Day speech. We did talk about yesterday that President Yoon did say that if there is denuclearization, there's going to be an audacious support plan, is the way that he put it. So nevertheless, let's talk a little bit more about this.
Right. So the U.S. expressed its strong support for South Korea's aim to open a path for, quote, serious and sustained diplomacy with Pyongyang. That's what the U.S. Department of State said during a briefing on Monday when asked to comment on South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol's Liberation Day message, in which he stated to provide drastic support to North Korea if it engages in denuclearization talks. State Department spokesperson Ned Price added that the complete denuclearization of the Korean peninsula is Washington's shared goal with Seoul and other allies and partners, vowing for continued close coordination with the Yoon administration in that regard. He also stressed the importance of the trilateral ties between the U.S., South Korea, and Japan to ensure security and advancing common interests, referring to interests in defending freedom and democracy. When further asked about the U.S.'s position on lifting sanctions at an early stage, Price avoided a direct answer, saying that's a completely hypothetical question, as Pyongyang hasn't even shown any sort of indication of interest in diplomacy or dialogue.
It's interesting that Net Price said this because, to be honest with you, I think if the U.S. Hinted at any kind of sanctions relief, North Korea will just pop out of nowhere and say, you know what, we are ready for dialogue right now. We are ready to discuss some negotiating deals. Right? I think that's the only reason why North Korea is not coming back to the negotiating table. I mean, they had all the pandemic situation and other kind of crises that they're going through as well. But I think I was always kind of saying that the only way to bring North Korea back into the dialogue is for U.S. to kind of put up some kind of sanctions relief. And if they do, hypothetically, indicate that they're willing to relieve some of these sanctions, I think North Korea definitely will come back. So, I mean, is this a plan moving forward? We'll have to see. But nevertheless, I wouldn't be surprised if there's more provocations from North Korea once these drills do happen. Shifting gears here, you know who's in Korea right now? Billie Eilish. She had a concert recently, I think. But also,
yesterday, I think, yeah.
Yes, but another Billy, this time Microsoft co-founder, I guess it's not Billy Gates, Bill Gates, expressed his wish for South Korea to play a bigger role in global health cooperation. And this is because he's also here in Seoul. So give us the details of his visit and what he said.
Sure. Let me talk about the meeting that Gates had with President Yoon Suk-yeol and a speech at the National Assembly earlier in the day. Health issues appeared to be the key during both of those events. Now, starting with the latest, this afternoon, Gates and Yoon met at the presidential office in Yongsan and discussed cooperation regarding health issues, including vaccine development. President Yoon thanked Gates, who also co-chairs the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, for helping South Korea's SK Bioscience in developing the nation's first homegrown COVID-19 vaccine in June, and also praised Gates for the contributions he made to modern industrial technology and infrastructure. Gates told Yoon that South Korea is a strong match with his foundation or the goals of his foundation, highlighting there is much capability in South Korea, expressing hopes for even more cooperation. And he in particular mentioned South Korea's prioritization of biological innovation and also the opportunity to create good jobs and improve health, not just in the wealthy, but also developing nations. And earlier in the day, during a speech at the National Assembly, Gates also noted that currently is a fantastic time for his foundation to strengthen the partnership with South Korea because he said this is a crisis moment for global health. Bill Gates also used the opportunity to call on South Korea to become a leader in the world's health sector or global cooperation to help to bring an end to infectious diseases like COVID-19. Yes, and other compliments he made, for instance, was that he praised South Korea's support in the COVAX facility, and he also mentioned how South Korea has transformed from a post-war economy into a powerhouse in a very short time. So with that, mentioning the potential that South Korea also has in the future regarding the health sector. And before being at the parliament for this speech, he also had a 40-minute meeting with the parliamentary leader, the speaker, Kim Jin-pyo.
Just very quickly, got a message in from Chris Rhodes, probably very upset that I didn't do the, the ending fairy or something yesterday. He says, watch out for Bill Gates buying up all your farmland too. The reason why Chris is saying this is because, I don't know if you guys know this, but in the United States, you know who owns the most number of farmlands? It's Bill Gates. Mm-hmm. He's been buying whatever farmland is available for sale, he's just been buying left and right. And a lot of people have been saying maybe there is a reason for why he's doing this right now. You know, there is a food shortage. There is a whole bunch of stuff. So maybe Bill Gates knew something was going to happen. Maybe is what it is, which is why it's very interesting that he is. This is not the first time that he's kind of expressed or shown support for SK Bioscience. I believe something like 2 years ago, he made mention of SK Bioscience and their path towards these COVID-19 vaccines, which skyrocketed all SK Bioscience related stocks at that time. I remember because I was one of the beneficiaries for brief moment before I lost everything. But we talked about how Bill Gates spoke at the National Assembly at the invitation of Speaker Kim Jin-pyo. Also, reportedly met with SK Group Chief Choi Tae-won, some other business figures to discuss the enhancement of global public health. I know Soa mentioned it briefly, but Ji, you have the details of this, so let's talk a little bit more about that.
Sure. So Bill Gates also met with SK Group's Chief Choi Tae-won, as well as SK Discovery Vice Chief Choi Chang-won and SK Bioscience Chief An Jae-yong in Yeouido this afternoon after speaking at the National Assembly and holding 40-minute meeting with the parliamentary leader earlier in the morning. They discussed, as Soa said, ways to cooperate for the enhancement of global public health. And SK Bioscience and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation have cooperated since 2013 and continued to expand their area of cooperation and continuously sought ways to solve the issue of global public health and agreed to carry out joint research on new vaccines as well as treatments for a possible new pandemic in the future. SK Bioscience is currently developing various vaccines and antiviral spray products with financial support from the Gates Foundation. And in the meantime, SK Inc. said it and an affiliate invested $250 million in TerraPower, which is a U.S. venture founded by Bill Gates that develops small modular reactors. Now, the investment in small modular reactors, which SK said is a competitive carbon-free energy source, goes toward SK Group's pledge in 2021 to reduce 200 million tons of carbon emissions by 2030. This is what SK said in a statement.
Yeah, so SK Discovery is very big on investing in these carbon-free green energy and so forth, which is not surprising. Speaking of which, just a quick correction that I want to make because Soa sent me a text message.
You don't have to make it that clear.
I was going to correct it too. The discussion was with SK Group Choi Tae-won, not during the 40-minute meeting. So Bill Gates and the chiefs of all these SK affiliates discussed ways to cooperate for the enhancement of global public health.
Well, because you said SK Group Chief Choi Tae-won, SK Discovery Vice Chief Choi Tae-won again.
Choi Tae-won.
Choi Chang-won. Didn't I say Choi Tae-won?
We both heard Choi Tae-won. Choi Chang-won
Choi Chang-won, yes.
Is the name, and so it was very important. I think maybe Soa's investing heavily into this.
Nah.
She told me you have to tell her. Make that correct. She sent me a text message. Told me to check in. But all joking aside, though, I don't know what it is. Anytime Bill Gates is investing heavily on something, I go, there might be a reason for why he's doing something like this. Again, he's buying up all the farmland over in the United States. There's probably a good reason for that. There's probably a very good reason why he's been heavily invested, heavily supporting SK Bioscience and their vaccine kind of movement. It could be, once again, maybe because Bill Gates believed that other viruses are going to be in existence for a really long time, and there's going to be a need for vaccines on a yearly basis. I don't know what it is. To me, him kind of going big on vaccines, it's kind of a scary thing. It's not a good premonition, in my opinion. Nevertheless, in other news, the government unveiling its housing supply plan this Tuesday, which involves a massive provision of new houses as well as easing of regulation on reconstruction and redevelopment. So definitely real estate's always a big issue here in South Korea. So you have the details of this.
Right. This announcement had been actually postponed by a week due to the heavy rainfall that started last week. So now it's out. It is the first announcement on the housing provision by the Yoon administration, which have been ambitiously seeking to stabilize the housing market in the country, which have been plagued by skyrocketing housing prices despite the former government's efforts through numerous rounds of policies. The key announcement was that 2.7 million homes are to be supplied nationwide over the next 5 years, starting in 2023. The amount was actually roughly expected because the government had pre-announced it'll be 2.5 million plus alpha. So the 2.7 million, meaning we've got some 200,000 being the alpha that the government was talking about, and 1.58 million in the capital Seoul and the other metropolitan areas, 50 million in Seoul alone, and 1.12 million in other provinces is expected. The Ministry of Land, Infrastructure and Transport said on Tuesday that this will be fulfilled through the easing of regulations for redevelopment and reconstruction, as well as giving permission to private sectors to join downtown development projects. And if we break down the numbers by project, it's going to be 520,000 homes that are going to be provided through redevelopment, reconstruction, and government-led development projects in cities. 880,000 will be public homes in metropolitan areas, and 1.3 million are to be provided through private sector development programs. The government, in its plan, also vowed to help residents of semi-basement apartments or 반지하 to move to safer facilities like public homes, or help them renovate their homes if they prefer to stay in their 반지하 homes. And this comes after 3 members of a family recently lost their lives last week during the heavy rainfall as floodwater filled their home. Now, meanwhile, follow-up measures of the home supply plan, as well as the specific sites for the new homes, will be announced step by step starting in October.
Yeah, I'm not sure how renovating their homes, if it's like a semi-basement apartment, is going to help, to be honest with you. I mean, there's still a lot of people talking about that, just like you said, because of the torrential rain that affected the lives of some family that lived there.
But I can imagine, though, that there will be some people that do not really want to move, not because the new home would not be good enough for them, but because
they can't afford it.
Right, financial issues. So it's not really so easy to just,
No,
make
it's
them
not.
move.
No, it's not, which is why one of the I guess plans that I put out, again, I have absolutely no power. I have no say in any of these. But one of the things that I thought was a good idea was maybe if you give them a very low interest loan specifically for rent, right? You know how there's like 전세 loans and there's like mortgage loans and things like that, but like rental loans, so that you get like they give you like 10, 20,000, maybe up to about 50,000 dollars in security, because the security deposit is what's really expensive, right? And most people can't afford that. I think they could kind of move out of the 반지하s or these semi-basements if they're given a low interest government loan on these rentals. I think might be one of the options put in place. But again, I don't know if building all these houses are going to help, because I don't know if you guys seen, and I know, G, you're big on like the 청약, right? The lottery system and things like that. But even that, it's expensive, right? And so the big criticism these days have been, they're building a lot of houses, or they're, have plans for a lot of these redevelopment projects, but not a lot of people can afford these houses because it's still very expensive. But hopefully they'll be able to kind of lower the prices here. Guys, President Yoon Suk-yeol is expected to carry out a press conference for the 100-day marking is since taking office here in hopes of raising his low approval ratings in the past few weeks. He did see actually his approval rating go up slightly. The ruling People Power Party also completed a leadership transition that removes the suspended party chief Lee Jun-suk from office, which is also very big news. Ji, tell us more about this.
Sure. So President Yoon will be carrying out his first official press conference tomorrow, which is 5 days ahead of his 100th day of taking office. And much attention is on the reason behind the holding of this conference, because President Yoon had earlier said that it seemed like a superficial and perfunctory event, this holding a conference like this. And the plan is widely expected to be used as a chance for his administration to recover the image that has badly deteriorated and led to weeks of low approval ratings for the president. And the ratings, if you take a look at it, have slipped to under 30% earlier, with pollsters largely attributing the decline to Yoon's personnel choices at the presidential office as well as the cabinet. And regarding this upcoming conference, President Yoon said he's thinking of bringing changes to better serve the people amid speculation. He could shake up the presidential office to turn his approval ratings around. Meanwhile, the ruling People Power Party's National Committee approved members of an emergency leadership committee, completing the leadership transition that removes Lee Jun-seok. Now, the PPP's National Committee approved the list through a vote, officially breaking up the party's Supreme Council headed by Lee and replacing it with an emergency committee headed by Representative Joo Ho-young, who has a 5-term experience as a lawmaker. And in addition, the 9-member list also includes floor leader Kwon Song-dong, as well as the PPP's top policymakers Hong Il-jong and Representatives Tae-young and Chun Joo-hae, as well as a former official of President Yoon Suk-yeol's transition team and council members of local assemblies.
Yeah, I think initially when Lee Jun-seok received that 6-month suspension, right, I think no one thought that he was going to come back after 6 months and regain his position and pretend nothing happened. I think there was a lot of pieces being moved so that he's kind of removed from that position for good. But guys, I know tomorrow marks 100 days, but probably I don't know if you guys are here tomorrow, so maybe it's best to kind of ask you guys right now, what are, first and foremost, 100 days, a lot of things have happened over the past 100 days with the Yoon administration, good or bad. Anything that really stood out for you in the first 100 days? Let's talk about this first, starting off with you, Soa.
Let me refer to a piece on 한국경제신문 or Korea Economic Daily, which actually asked 100 opinion leaders on the first 100 days of the Yoon administration. And they gave him grades for specific categories. In general, what do you think he got? What grade do you think
January?
he got? In general.
Oh, I just said he wasn't the president in January. In general,
What are the grades?
but I can't. So, but I can't give you
From
the
A to F.
But I can't give you my grade because then there's going to be a lot of backlash. SJ, are you?
What do you think the experts gave him? The 100 experts.
Like on average.
You said what newspaper did you say it was?
It was Korea Economic Daily.
Korea Economic.
한경.
Okay, so it's more on the conservatives. Like a B minus, B minus, B plus, something like that. Somewhere on the B range.
What do you think, T?
I think the same.
Oh, really? They were actually harsher. It was a C.
really?
What?
And if we break it down into the sectors, he actually got a B for the economy and for diplomacy and security. But then where he really did get a bad grade was in terms of appointments during his first 100 days.
Okay.
Most experts gave him a D or even an F. So this is what experts have been mentioning on the first 100 days. And in general, I agree with the experts' assessments on which areas Yoon has been doing better than in others and which not so well. But if we take into consideration that Yoon's approval rating stands at the 20% level, I didn't check the latest approval ratings. However, it means that the general public seems to be harsher than these experts' assessments is what I think. And what I think is that this has a lot to do with the Yoon administration or Yoon's failure in the right way of communication with the people. Because I think that in the first 100 days, the attempt to communicate more with the people was actually good. The attempt itself, for instance, President Yoon trying to communicate with journalists on a daily basis. The attempt was good, but I think the result is actually what dropped Yoon's approval ratings. So I think in the coming up weeks, months, that's something the administration should work on further on.
I mean, I wouldn't say like his doorstepping was the main reason for why he saw a drop in approval rating.
Yeah,
to be honest.
that's
Like, it's
just
one
an example.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons, right? And which is also the reason why like his fellow PPP, some of the PPP members are like, maybe let's kind of calm down on the doorstepping, right? Because it's not really working out here. And then I think one of the changes that we've been seeing with President Yoon's doorstepping, it's more planned out now. It's more like a speech rather than like an impromptu question and answer kind of a thing. And I think he's being more cautious in regards to this. For our listeners out there, I mean, can you guys send the grades out? Because JB Hoon says C is generous, I guess. ... is what JB says. Gee, what about yourself? Let's get your take on this. Also, what's kind of like the people say? I think the last time I checked the approval rating, it was something like 31%, I think. But
Yeah, it's around that, like
Yeah.
32.
Oh, it went up to the
Yes.
30%.
yeah, it
level.
went back up to the 30% range. But nevertheless, what are the normal citizens saying in regards to the first 100 days of President Yoon?
All right, so if you take a look at the general public's kind of opinion on President Yoon's first 3 months or so of him taking office, it's not very high. I mean, he began with very low expectations as well. It was lower than any other president in the past, and yet his approval ratings right now stands very low. And if you take a look at this recent poll, which was conducted from the 13th to the 14th on some 1,000 people, it showed that 32.9 think President Yoon is doing a good job in managing the state affairs. And the result came out today. And specifically, some 20%, 19.2% to be exact, answered he's doing a very good job, and 13.7% said he's doing a somewhat good job. On the other hand, 66.6% said he is not doing a good job. And if you take a look at the people who answered positively, who had positive opinions of the president, the people in their from 18 to 29, 22%, 9% said that they were positive about the president's state affairs, and 25.9% of the people in their 30s answered that they think the president is doing a good job. And the numbers were 32.3% and 48.6%, a lot higher than the people who are younger for the people in their 50s and 60s. And this poll was conducted by a poll station called Chowon CNA, and it was requested by CBS. And the recent poll was done through random digit dialing, so you just randomly call people and then ask for their opinion. And other than this general kind of public's opinion on the president, my personal impression and opinion on the president's way of managing state affairs, I mean, all I remember are moments of disappointment, really. I mean, a lot of things really happened.
Because you had high expectations. I think with high expectations, I think also comes disappointment
Yeah,
too. I mean,
true.
it's inevitable, right?
True. I mean, he began with meeting President Biden, which also raised hopes for people, like it was a very early timing for a president to meet for the U.S. president. But then after that, all we saw was kind of a lot of disappointment, and it seemed as though he didn't really stick to his words. His words did not align with his actions, especially with
Just say the C word. Just say this. Just say the C word.
He was not consistent. And in designating the personnel, he said he would diversify the people that he would put into the cabinet and the presidential office, but he did not keep to that. And recently he also had some controversy over how he treated Nancy Pelosi and so on, and also the People Power Party's problem with Lee Jun-suk as well. So everything that happened was really not very impressive.
I think that really the big one was on the personnel selections. There was a lot of talks at the very beginning. He's going to go into, hiring people who are in their, maybe even their 20s, right? He was saying like 30s, male and female from all different backgrounds. And then we kind of saw that, the vast majority of the people were like in their 50s and 60s, majority of them from Seoul National University, where he's an alumni, former prosecutors and things like that, which really irked a lot of people. But I think, when it comes to diplomacy, right? I know at the very start, President Yoon Suk-yeol was saying that, he's going to be more leaning towards the United States. And there was a lot of talks about him being more hawkish towards China, which I was a little bit concerned, which also that was kind of the criticism for former President Moon Jae-in, right? They were saying you're kind of letting China do all sorts of stuff, and you're kind of being very lenient towards China, and you're siding too much towards China and things like that. But I think eventually he realized that you just can't bypass China. You can't ignore China. China is a huge part of Korea's economy. And so you can't just go, all right, we are going to be tight with the United States and China. We're just going to, forget about you guys. It just doesn't happen that way. And I think at least one of the, I thought, and I think he was graded relatively high on diplomacy. I think it was like B or something like that. B+. And I agree with that because I think President Yoon and his administration did best they can to balance that out without upsetting both sides. Although, again, I think the U.S. were a little bit upset recently with the whole Nancy Pelosi ordeal because they were saying, he probably didn't meet Nancy Pelosi because he didn't want to upset China, right? Was what it was. And so the U.S. side, I saw some interviews from the Voice of America, and they were a little bit upset. But that's inevitable. You can't make both sides happy and try to make this balance act right now. I think the Yoon administration actually has been doing a very good job with the diplomatic affairs. Now, in North Korea is the other thing, right? That's the other task now, right? How's he going to deal with North Korea moving forward? Benny said, if I grade President Yoon, I also give C. C is like always like the easy grade to give. Consistent. Besby says yes. Consistent G says that is why I will give the president letter C too. Not the grade C, letter C for consistency.
But I agree with you, SJ, how he, I think, did a pretty good job in terms of the diplomatic affairs and keeping a balance. But other state affairs, I mean, there are a lot of
okay, you know what? I'm
disappointments
going to give the benefit of the doubt for President Yoon. You know why? Because he doesn't have a whole lot of political experience.
Yeah.
Right? Like how many, he has what, like a little over a year of political experience? As opposed to some of the other candidates that we've seen in the past where they have years and decades of experience. So I think he's trying to ease his way in. He's still trying to discover what it's like. It's definitely not easy to become the president, but I guess you could only go up from here, right? Because
you sound very lenient, though, towards...
I mean, it's first 100 days, right? Like, it's 100 days. Will I feel the same way after a year or two? I don't know, but we'll have to see. Guys, let's move on to other issues now. We're still talking about the aftermath of the heavy rain that we saw last week, but continues in some of the southern parts of the nation through tomorrow. So what's the latest here?
Right. It's been a little over a week now since the devastating rain caused havoc across the country, which started in the metropolitan region. Now, while it has calmed down in Seoul and surrounding areas, as you can see, currently it's the southern regions that are still dealing with heavy rainfall. I think some regions in the very south may even expect up to some 150 millimeters through tomorrow. According to the Central Disaster and Safety Countermeasures headquarters this Tuesday, as of early this morning, the heavy rain that began on the 8th this month has so far killed 14 people. By region, that's 8 deaths in Seoul, 4 in Gyeonggi-do province, 2 in Chungcheongnam-do province, and 26 people were injured. And most recently, 2 people who were driving on a cultivator were reported missing in Chungcheongnam-do province's Buyeogun on Sunday, raising the number of people still missing to 6. And over 1,000 firefighters, more than 700 police personnel have been deployed to search for the missing people. Now, last night, there were no additional casualties reported, but the rain led to further flooding of houses and soil loss. As of Friday, 6 a.m., over 4,050 households nationwide, that's more than 7,800 people, had to evacuate. More than 2,300 people from around 1,400 households were displaced. And a total of 1,241 public facilities were damaged, including road slopes, stations, tracks, railways, and many facilities, even cultural assets. And the government is carrying out emergency restoration with almost 9,000 of 10,400 facilities restoration actually completed now. Over 48,600 manpower have been deployed in 7 cities and provinces.
Oh, goodness. Still people missing after a week, right? You still aren't able to find them. Let's now take a look at the COVID-19 updates here in the country. We are seeing a continuous increase in the number of new infection cases. But most importantly, we're also seeing a steep rise in the number of critically ill patients as well. We're also expected to reach a new peak by the end of the month. G, let's get the details.
Sure, very briefly. So the country added 84,128 new COVID-19 infections as of today, including 463 cases from overseas. And new daily infections fell below the 100,000 level Monday for the first time in a week to come to 62,078. And the decrease is mainly attributable to fewer tests over the extended weekend that included the Liberation Day, which was yesterday. But the number of critically ill patients came to 563, which is up from the previous day. And this figure is the highest since April 26, when the country reported 613 serious cases. And also, there were 37 more COVID-19 deaths, and now the fatality rate stands at 0.12%. And like you said, we're expected to see a new peak of around 200,000 new cases by the end of this month.
Very quickly, on to some vaccine news. UK becoming the first country in the world to approve an updated version of the Moderna vaccine against COVID-19, which targets two COVID-19 strains. So let's get the details of this.
Right. This upgraded version of the vaccine maker is a bivalent vaccine, meaning it works against two strains, the original strain and the Omicron variant. And the British government said in a statement that it was found to meet the UK regulators' standards of safety, quality, and effectiveness. And also, Moderna said this vaccine demonstrated a potent response against BA4 and BA5 subvariants as well. So when will we here in South Korea benefit from this? If you remember, some weeks or months ago, Moderna had actually made an announcement regarding this vaccine in Korea during a press briefing. And a health ministry official said this Tuesday that the South Korean government is expected to make an announcement on the introduction by the end of August. And I believe also the nation's drug agency is actually already reviewing this new vaccine.
Yeah, we're going to read this really quick, right? But whether or not people are going to get vaccinated with this is the other question. I think people's willingness to get vaccinated moving forward has been going down a lot ever since everyone started just getting COVID-19. They're like, what's the point, right? But a lot of health experts are saying that you'll have lesser symptoms if you get these vaccines and get COVID-19. But we'll see what happens. Nevertheless, guys, thank you very much for coming in today with your report and your insights on some of these issues. Please stay safe, and we'll see you guys again.
See you.
You can listen to Korea Now with me, SJ Lee, by downloading the Arirang radio application or tune in online by visiting www.arirangradio.com. So make sure you tune in Mondays through Fridays, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Korea time.